is Mark Burrick. And here at Better at Beach, we try to help you get better at beach. Shocker, I know, but we try to help you get better as a coach, as a player, club directors. We're starting to tutor them. And we like to learn every bit about the game from all angles. So if you want to become a better player, or a coach, head on over betteratbeach.com and check it out. If you want us to come to your town uh, and run a clinic for you, your club, your neighborhood, your group of friends, check out betteratbeach.com/clinics. And if you want to come on a 7-day training vacation and hang out for 7 days in a cool beach with a cool hotel and tons of volleyball every day, go to betteratbeach.com/camps. If you're interested in a free drill book, we've compiled our 36 favorite beach volleyball drills, and you can find that on betteratbeach.com. It's the homepage. Check it out right there. For today, we have a cool guest, and this will be, you guys will be one of the first guests that will be kind of learning about each other at the same time, because although we were playing on tour together for a while at the same time, most people don't know that the majority of the men's and women's tour are kind of at times separate tours. Like you can play on the AVP tour for 10, 15 years and really not get to know everybody. I think sometimes maybe qualifier teams end up partying a lot more because you have more opportunity and you get to learn about those people more. But if you're experiencing some form of success, and our guest today absolutely has, then you don't get to know everybody. And so I'm excited to get to know our guest today after such a long time playing alongside her. So she was a 2018 gold medalist in the FIVB Shepparton Open. She's got numerous AVP semifinals and a bunch of international medals. She competed for Team USA and has since retired and moved back to Texas. So I would love to have a great conversation, a warm welcome with Amanda Dowdy Lawson. What's going on?
Thanks, Mark. I love that whole introduction. That was awesome.
I'm working on my Geeter skills.
Yeah, it was good. Very impressed.
Nice. So, your mom life, and let's get right
Yeah.
into it.
All right.
What's mom
Yeah.
life like?
Oh man, it's amazing. It's exhausting. Oh, humbling, all the things. But I just welcomed my baby girl in early July. She was born on July 11th. And it's been my most favorite season so far, just getting to know her. Um, and surprisingly, a lot of things that I learned in volleyball are carrying through to parenthood, motherhood.
Ooh,
Uh,
I like this. This
yes.
gets me fired up because I've
Yeah.
I'm like I'm 7 months out, so I'm short behind you. So I'll take notes from you right away. Uh,
Yes.
but I always look at. First of all, I'm happy that that I'm doing this at the age that I'm doing. So I'm 37
Mm.
now. I'm about to have my first kid, and I coached for a long time. Right, I've
Mm-hmm.
coached, I guess, since I was 13, and even as a 20-something-year-old coaching, you always get this idea that you can make everybody get on your page, and then when you become a good coach, it's you learn how to coach different individuals because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's different. And then seeing my nephews and nieces grow up and being like, they grew up with the same parents and they're completely different,
Yeah.
and then you need that skill set to be able
Yes.
to communicate with different people. So I'm happy that I've done it after a long time coaching. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but what are you learning in your new season here? And how
A
are you
few,
transferring it from sport?
yeah, so a few things. The first thing you just said is I've been learning a lot about just surrendering because she is her own person and I'm learning a lot from her every day. So just like coaching, it's how do I like connect with her as an individual? She can't quite communicate to me yet, but and she's communicating in her own way.
Are you doing
So I'm
like the
ha
sign language and like
no,
thumbs when I have to poop and stuff like that?
no, I'm just trying to like be in tune with her, like her cry, like it's just now forming into okay, that's a tired cry or that's a hungry cry. Whereas before, as like a new baby, you can't, you don't know what cry that is. It's just a cry. Um, but that's been one of the biggest things I've learned is just kind of surrendering to her. Like whatever I had planned or whatever I wanted to do is just like I'm setting that to the side and I'm going to be present with her and just like move through whatever it is, if it's nap time or feeding or whatever. Um, so that's just kind of taught me a whole nother level of patience.
Hmm.
And so I want to say that whole mentality of coaching will serve you well into fatherhood, of you getting to know your baby and them as just like an individual. Because right from them being a newborn on, it's like, it's crazy. They change so much every day. But a few things, you can pass this one on to your wife,
Nice.
because I know she's an athlete. And so everything that I learned about recovery for my body, I took with me into my pregnancy.
Oh.
And the same with like nutrition, I took with me into my pregnancy and then now into my postpartum. And postpartum has been a little bit more difficult because I have, another human that needs me 100% of the time. But I've tried my very best to keep that same discipline coming into postpartum and just give myself the best shot of recovery and just like mental health, all of it. And yeah, so that was one thing that really served me well, especially in pregnancy. So definitely pass that on to her. And um, I was going somewhere else with it, but what were you at? The whole.
Well, I know that like it can be. It's funny that you said taking the nutrition
Hmm.
into pregnancy because my wife is almost a vegetarian. Like she
Yeah.
just she doesn't actually like meat. She doesn't care about anything else. Like not the morality, not anything like that. She just doesn't like the texture or enjoy it. But she pays so much attention to her body and she feels better when she
Hmm.
has it. So she
Hmm.
like begrudgingly adds it to her diet, sort of like most people are kind of with vegetables, I'd say, you know.
Yeah.
But now she she can't stand vegetables. She's like,
Oh
I
no.
can't wait to actually want a salad again. So she's like, for the
Oh
first time,
yeah.
like craving these pastas and carbs, and like she's
Hmm.
looking at meat like, man, I really want that. And then for the first time, which she's kind of annoyed at, she she has zero desire to have a salad, which has been,
Yeah.
she's used to having those 3 times a day.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like, because one thing you learn as an athlete is how to listen to your body.
Mm,
And so that is definitely a mentality that I've carried with me. And that's one of my main focuses throughout my whole pregnancy and postpartum is listening to my body because I definitely was more regimented with my diet, what I was putting into my body. And I still carry that same discipline, but it's less regimented. I'm more of like what sounds good to me,
mm.
what makes me feel good, at least right now in this season, because it's all about just my body healing, me recovering. I'm feeding another human, so it's a whole thing. um, so I've taken that guilt away on purpose because it's not about how fast I can get back. It's about all the other things. I want to heal well. I want to when I come back, I want to be better than I was before. All that. So for me, I just like give myself a lot of grace with that and listen to what my body wants and let it lead the way. But the other thing I took away from beach volleyball was just that level of discipline and time management. Because as a parent, it's on a whole nother level. You'll get these little slices of alone time, and you're like, okay, what do I want to do with it? And so for me, it's like I might not feel like working out at that time, but I know that's my only time. Or
Hmm.
I really need a nap because we didn't sleep well the night before. But you know what I mean? So there's just like that level of discipline that I'm able to bring into my life now as a mom has been really helpful. Because it definitely hasn't been easy.
I bet.
But yeah.
I mean, from my experience, from Janelle's experience, like she's taken 2, 3, 4 naps a day when
Yeah.
that was never ever a thing.
Yeah.
So she's sleeping a ton, and we still have this discipline because we know we both feel really good when we lift or when we work out. Like she
Mhm.
is my number one lifting partner, right? We don't always do
Mhm.
the same exercises because we got different goals, but she's definitely my lifting partner. So now it's turned into, and it's funny. I just watched the movie What to Expect When You're Expecting. Great film, like Chris
Yeah.
Rock, and like it was. I was like, man, I guess this is one of those like season of life type movies. But they're making fun of the one guy who's like young and single, and he's like running and doing pull ups. He's like, you ain't running no more, man. We are doing walks now. He's like, you're a dad.
Yes.
And so we've been going on these long, like 1 to 2 mile walks, which historically I've hated walking, but I'll do anything for this woman. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, all right, let's just go on a walk today.
Yeah, man. Welcome to dad life. Me and Brad go on walks like sometimes two a day.
Nice.
In the morning and the evenings, we're just like, hey, let's go for a walk.
Do you? I'm kind of curious, like the time management thing. For me, it's weird. People might not know that I'm not very disciplined with my time, like with my wake up. It's because I think for worse, not there's definitely no for better about this, but for worse, I would always like wait till 1 or 2 days before to start scheduling practices. So it'd be like 9 p.m., right? And you're doing that like text chain trying to schedule practices with everybody in the AVP and be like, hey, you free
Yeah.
tomorrow? Yeah, but let me just get my fourth. Hey, I got another defender. Can you get a blocker? Like, no, I already told you we have a defender. Okay, well, let me text this guy. He might be playing with this guy. And I went through all that, and then all those time practices, like, they change because everybody's schedule changed, and then I'm getting
Yeah.
private lessons, and so there was never a, "This is when I do this. This is when I do this," because it wasn't always available, and I could never
Yeah.
convince, uh, like, another team to say, "Hey, will you practice against me for this month at
Yeah.
this time every day?" That would've been so much easier. Oh my god.
Oh, yeah. Well, that honestly, first, we're totally different
Mm.
because me and beach volleyball, I was like the planner. I like to know who I was practicing against for that month leading up to whatever tournament,
The
all
whole
that.
month. Was it
Yes.
one team?
No,
Okay.
it was switch. We kind of had like the circle of women's teams that we would rotate. Um, so yeah, we for the women's side, it was all about scheduling out in advance because you could not find a team. I mean, I guess you could. It was just a lot more stressful,
Yes.
like the night before, 2 nights before. Um, but having that mentality into fatherhood, of you're just like, there's really no set schedule, especially in those early days with a newborn. It's going to serve you well. You're going to be just fine.
I'm looking forward, and I'm like, yeah, I do know that I feel great. So we're starting another round of our live challenge. We have a 21-day athletic foundations challenge where we take everybody
Nice.
through mobility every morning. Like you have your morning schedule, what you have to do for the first 40 minutes of being awake, and then we give them like different at-home drills they could do, plus mobility and fitness for 21 days.
Sweet.
And I take that and I know that I feel amazing when I do that, when I lock myself into making sure I get out of bed by 6, having a cup of water before anything else, doing mobility before anything else. Like I know that I feel amazing during this. But then I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. But then what if I like wake up 3 or 4 times because of a kid? And yeah, The Rock,
Yeah.
Wayne Johnson, he's got a schedule. He sticks to it, even though he's a monster with his schedule. And you're trying to look at all these people who you respect and
Yeah.
appreciate, and they say, yeah, you got to do this. But does it all get thrown out the window for the first 2 years? I don't know.
I don't know about the first 2 years because I'm still in month two,
Hmm.
but it does for that firstborn. While they're like a newborn, it does get thrown out the window, especially depending on how you and Janelle have it set up, like night duty and stuff like that. But for sure for the mom, because everything just changes drastically because that little baby relies solely on you. But it does change a lot of things for the dad. And I know Brad's been going through that, but it's a season of just giving yourself grace and you lower your expectations. And because they're
Or set
low,
none, right? Like,
yes, because then you won't be disappointed. And then you're like, today was a win because I got in a walk or I stretched or hey, I drank whatever ounces of water. That was my goal. Because that's what I've been trying to do for myself is like little goals just to make me feel like I'm accomplishing right now with knowing that my priority is Ella. And that's been helping me mentally because it is hard. That is a hard shift from going like being an athlete my whole life to switching to this role where someone relies on me all the time. It's hard. It's very easy to forget about yourself. So little goals help.
are there any things from, I mean, doing as a mom, it's new, right? But the lessons that you learned in partnership on the
Mm,
AVP, not just necessarily coaching or time management, but
hmm.
when you heard like, oh, this is a tired cry. Like I remember being with some partners, and it took me so long to figure out like, stop hammering this guy when he's tired because it makes him want to leave and it makes him worse. Just kind of like
Yeah.
let him do his thing, let him get his anger out. Like he's probably having a bad day. I've had bad days, instead of, dude, you need to show up for me like right now. You
Yeah.
know, so I got a little bit a lot lighter with that later in my career. But until
Yeah.
then, I was just an absolute pit bull. Like, you show up every day, you drive as hard as you can, and you don't give up until the 2.5 hours is up. Period.
Yeah.
So, did
Yeah.
you pull
No,
anything from
totally.
partnerships? And what kind of partner were you?
Oh man, that's a great question. Yes, I'll say yes, I did. And I think as I matured throughout my career, I'll answer the what kind of partner I was first, and then I'll get into how it has affected me into motherhood. But um, as I matured throughout my career, I feel like my I was a better partner because you don't know what you don't know in the beginning, and you're learning. Because one of like the biggest things coming, like as an outsider coming into beach volleyball, is like you have no idea how it works out there in California until you get out there and you're just figuring it out. Because there's not a lot of like mentorship, at least there wasn't at the time. Um, so I would say like in the beginning, I was a lot like you, where it was like, no, this is like what I expect or what is expected of me, and there's no other option. And then once you learn and you're in it and you go through the gauntlet and you're grinding it out, you're like, okay, no, there's actually empathy to be shared here.
Right.
um, and so I feel like throughout my career, I got better and just more mature, and I was able to kind of just step into more of like, no, I get it, and I can lead in that like empathy role. Um, but I will say also while holding that standard, like it's a fine balance, because you want to show up and you want your partner to give everything that you're giving, but you also want to have empathy for whatever that day brings.
Right.
Um, so anyways, into motherhood, I would say naturally. Oh, what?
Is there
Yes.
anything that's dragging on the microphone right now, or like any material or anything? Because there's just like
No. Is
a
there a
sound
crackly?
pop, yeah, crackly pop. But if
Is
it
it better
happens,
if I get closer
no.
to
But
the
it also
mic?
might be my thing. Who knows?
Okay.
I don't know. If
You
anybody
sound
out
clear.
there is listening uh, on the chat and you're here live, just let us know if you're hearing some crackling. I don't know if there's anything we can do about it, but we'll just deal with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. You're clear on my end. So, um, but into motherhood, I would say it's taught me, sorry for Google going off right there, but I would say, I guess just bringing that level of empathy into motherhood even more so. Like naturally, I kind of adapted into that of like learning what my baby needs. But I would say more so for me and Brad, like
Same.
a partnership.
I learned
uh,
what partner I should have been when I started
yes,
like trying to be a better partner in my marriage.
yes, totally. So I think that's where it's had the biggest impact. And then now that him and I are on this journey together, raising Ella, it's just like, oh, yeah, we get it. Like some days we'll be like, hey, that was great teamwork today. And it's a lot of like self-sacrifice of like he's picking up the slack in one area and I'm doing it in another area or whatever. But it's just constant tag team because that's just how it goes. And so why not maximize it is how we think.
Right.
But I think both of us being in the sport and learning that has helped us tremendously in our marriage and then now into parenthood.
And
So
then learning early in the AVP, or maybe not early enough, um, not to nitpick on what something's doing wrong with all of your feedback or what they're not doing enough of, right? But
yeah,
like anytime they do something good, that's something I learned from coaching, and then finally like did with partnerships, and then okay, now like with the marriage books, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, I can do that. Like, you
yes,
look for the things, or you catch them in the act of doing something great that you love, and you celebrate that,
yes,
so that
you
like you
affirm that.
emphasize the good instead of knocking them down for the bad.
Yeah, for sure. And you just affirm all the good things that you want, but also one thing that I've learned from beach volleyball and is carrying through is communication. That's been huge. And I had a couple of mentors with childbirth that helped me with this, and they were like, Amanda, you have to over communicate on some things because your partner can't read your mind.
I
And it's
This is the way that you said over communicate, because
yeah,
I think everybody thinks of themselves as a communicator. Like, yeah, of course,
hmm
yeah, communication, yeah,
yeah,
I talk,
yeah,
but talk to the point where you feel almost uncomfortable with how many
hmm
times you've repeated it until they say, yes, I definitely know. Or if when you ask, do you say, do you know what I need right there? And
Yeah.
then they can answer it on their own, then it's like, all right, we're good now.
Totally. Yes. That's been huge. It was huge in my career with the partnerships that I had. And then now into my marriage and into parenthood, it's everything. So over communicate.
I love that over communicate. That's I think I don't know what it's like, on the women's side. Like I've coached women, I've coached men. I know that there are significant differences in behavior practice, relationships, what you need to talk about, what you need to celebrate. One of the examples is like we have I've talked about before in the podcast, but we have a thing we call it's a betterbeach.com/partner profile. It asks you a
Hmm.
series of questions just based on how do you like to warm up? Like what should I do to fire you up in the beginning of a match? Should I leave you alone and let you focus, or should I like hit you in the chest? How about what is something that absolutely turns you off? Like is there a word or a phrase that some coach said at some point and it just you hated that person, so anytime you hear those words you hate it. Like for me it's the word lazy. Like if you call
Mm.
me lazy I'll just be like, you're wrong, you don't know me, and on no planet
Immediately
could
shut
could
him
that
out.
possibly true. Yeah, and it would fire me up.
Yeah.
So we created this one, and then we were running open training in Salt Lake City, and we went with the guys, and I said, hey, what's the number one thing to fire you up? And it was basically saying like, hey, it's you and me, and we're gonna kill that team because they're trying to take something from us.
Mm.
For the women, except for one of them in that open training group, that was the number one turn off, was being mean, like openly mean to the other team, which this isn't everybody, right?
Yeah.
But it was like that was a hole that all of these guys wanted this, all of these girls wanted exactly the opposite. So you start
Yeah.
to learn a little bit better about how to motivate as a coach and what is actually going to shut somebody down and what's not.
Yeah. That's really cool that you created that profile.
Yeah, it's
Because,
fun.
yeah, men and women are completely different and we're motivated by different things, encouraged by different things. Yeah. So, because I know, like, with my partnerships in beach volleyball, it was very much like you kind of become, like, for us, it was becoming best friends. You just do because you're on the road together, you're doing everything together. And then um, we just like learned in real time. But the older I got in the sport, the better I was at communicating that or leading that. So
We're
like,
asking the right questions, right?
yes, yeah, especially if I had a younger partner. Like I know in 2019 I had a younger partner and I felt more comfortable with asking those questions because she it was her first experience and being AVP main draw and or being on the FIVB tour. And so I felt more comfortable sitting in that role because of like my previous partnerships like built me up in that way. Like I
Mhm.
had the experience from those partnerships to now bring that into a partnership with a younger person. But yeah, women are totally different and we like to over communicate. We like to have that relationship piece. So
I think men actually need more of it
mm,
than e-
like
not
there
to the
is.
extent, but it's. I mean, I'll talk to Janelle and some people, and they'll start asking like immediate deep questions, and I go, this is a quick way to turn a guy off. Like you and this person need to bond in another way, sitting next to each other, just chilling for a while, and then after a couple months is the time when you can ask a real question. But if you do that before they put up a quick wall, um, if you do that the opposite, I think with more women, where like you start to make fun of them at first, or you compete at first, for a lot of people, that's the way to shut that one down. And then you got like another wall to operate. And this isn't just guys and girls, but it is with everybody. And you have to have different tactics as a partner, as a coach, as a human, as a husband, as a wife, like whatever. You need to have different tactics, and you need to observe, or at least have some third parties saying, hey, the way you're acting is shutting this down, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Totally. And I think that actually helped throughout my career is having that third party. So having a coach or a mentor
Mm,
with our team. that helped us navigate that, because when you're in it together and it's like you're, like I said, grinding it out, like either you're on the AVP and you have so many tournaments a year, or you're doing both on the FIVB, and traveling, it gets exhausting. So you definitely need that person, that non-biased person that can sit in there and be like, hey, let's talk about this, or hey, what's going on here, or whatever, can help you navigate that, because it's really hard to do on your own, especially at
It
that
is,
level.
right? It's weird that it is.
Yeah.
Like, how do I ask this question? So it's not offensive. How do I say what I want without like worrying that this is going to,
Yeah.
say like get them to dump you immediately? And that's a relationship thing, that's a friend thing, that's a family thing, that's a volleyball thing. But we
Yeah.
just we work harder at it when it's volleyball.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why. Maybe because you care a little bit
I-
less. Like
yeah.
I care less about my volleyball partners than I do a family member.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe I'll wait longer to say something to a family member that I don't like or that I think they're screwing up. Actually, that's not true. I tell my tight family, the family that I know, like my friends and family that I know, it's never going to. We're gonna fight. We're always gonna be together, no matter what we do. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those families, those are the ones that I'm quick to be like, "You're screwing up. This is how." You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I'm actually the opposite, where I'm slower to say that to somebody who I think might leave, like a partner or something like that.
Yeah. And I think too, for like everybody listening, and maybe if you're new to the sport, like beach volleyball, I jokingly say is the most individual team sport out there. But there's a lot of emotion that rides into it, because for beach volleyball players today, like you sacrifice so much
Mm.
to make it on tour and to make this your livelihood. And you want that partner to be on that same page with you. So I think that's where it gets like you're just trying to close those gaps as quickly as possible of like, hey, let's be on the same page. And I think that's where women naturally become like best friends for that season, because we want to close that gap as quickly as possible, because we're trying to reach certain goals as efficiently as we can. And so that's why we talk so much about like the relational piece, because it's so important in our sport. Like I think that's what brings a lot of momentum behind a team. Those teams that can really stick it out during tough matches.
Mhm.
Like I've watched a few of the AVPs this year, and I've seen it. I've stepped out of the sport, so I don't know how the relationship piece are, but I'm willing to bet on the women's side, I just watched Sarah Hughes and Kelly Kalinsky take the Manhattan title, and they came back from a deficit in that third set. And I guarantee you that they've worked on their relationship off the court as well, and they've been in those situations multiple times to be able to bring out the best in each other. So I think that's why we talk about it so much, is because it's so important in our sport.
Right.
And yeah,
Yeah. And then then you go to the opposite, and you get like Hayden and Theo, who they played together, but they weren't. Yeah,
yeah,
they were not on the same page for an entire season, and they
hmm,
still won a championship together.
yeah. I know
It's so weird when
it
that
can go
happens.
either way. Our sport is weird. Our
It's
sport
so
is
weird.
so weird. It is
It's
so
so
weird how momentum can shift all the time. Like you'll see someone just like totally let's like dominate the first set and then get dominated the second set. And you're like, wait a second. So
Why
it's
do you think
so
that happens? Why do you think that turn happens? Is that to me? It's always a statistical thing. It's
okay.
always like, okay, it's going to balance out. My college coach who was talking to indoor setters, he goes, if somebody makes a hitting error and then they get blocked, the worst thing you can do for them, and the worst thing you can do statistically, is to not set them the third ball,
Mm,
because like if you look
so true.
statistically, they're probably due for their next kill. I don't know how much
Hmm.
sense that actually makes, but I think the swing back from those is always,
Hmm.
well, yeah, it's gonna ride out. Like if I make three hitting errors in a row, I go, I'm probably gonna play pretty good for the next few points. Like if we talk about stats here, so I'm always like, "This is great. No, set me again. No, I don't want you to hit on two. Like I'm due for a kill."
Yeah.
I treat it like the Simpsons episode where it's like they were 0-82. I thought they were due. That's why I bet them.
No, totally. It's so interesting. Like, that's a great point. There probably is some statistical reasoning behind it. And then also, like, I think at least the level that we both played and that I'm watching today when I go back and watch AVPs, um, it's such an even playing field. Like everybody out there is so good, and it's such a mental game So it could have just been a mental thing that first set for them, and they're coming back and bringing their best that second. So it's always going to even out. So there's a lot of truth to that, I think. Yeah.
Or a lot of times, like something like some kink that was there in warm-ups, or like something in
Yes.
your neck or something, and like you go through that first set. This happens to me all the time. I don't know why, but except for this one tournament this year in Virginia Beach where my whole body cramped out, my
Oh
body
no.
almost always shows up for me. Like
Hmm.
I'll walk up to the court and my like I don't think I can walk. And then I play the first set and I get stomped. And then somewhere halfway through that first set, my body just shows up for me and will be there for
Hmm.
the rest of the tournament. Like this happened at 3 different tournaments this year where I was like, I don't think I should fly there because I don't know if I'm going to be able to play. But you know what? You're going to have to drag me off the court. So I'll go. I'll fly. And then after that, like the first half of the set, your body just shows up. So I wonder if that happens a lot to other people. I
Oh
always used
yeah,
to
for
think
sure.
that people like the champions, I always just think, man, it must be great to feel perfect all the time. And then you start seeing it.
You don't.
Nobody feels perfect,
No.
right? Jake Gibb
Every.
gets the flu. Phil Dahauser tears an ab and still wins.
I know.
Sean's playing with a bum knee and a bun back. And you're just like, oh, everybody feels like crap all the time.
Yep.
It's just the
Hmm.
people who override it.
So true. I was gonna say that. I feel like that's the mental piece of our game is your brain does have that ability to override. And there's just like that whole that statement of you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable is so true in our sport. Because there's more times than not that you're uncomfortable. Something doesn't feel right, or you're actually sick, or whatever. You didn't recover well. There's always something. But I think that's part of being a professional too.
But
Um, it-
do you think that that's getting ruined? I mean, I know this is a side, and I hate talking about like society and culture on anything, but do you think that that's legitimately? I hate the discussion of this culture today, this society, because I feel like every single generation says these guys are screwing up the world. Like I can't. Thank God I'm not going to be around when these guys are adults. But to say that, when you're hurt, when you're sad, when you're angry, that you just take some time for yourself. Don't play. Don't go to practice today. Don't
Mm,
show up. Like, is that really gonna benefit anybody? Because you got to be able to show up. It's not that the best people feel best the most often. I've seen it. The best people
mhm,
override it.
totally. Yeah. That I would say like there's a fine line of balancing there
Hmm.
of like if there is something like very legitimate, whether it be mental health or anything along those lines,
But it
then
should be
yes.
repeated, right?
Right.
It shouldn't be like this day you're sad. It should be
Right.
like, man, you haven't been feeling it for a long time.
Yeah.
Something's going on. Let's exit,
Yeah.
and let's take a look at it. But not
Yeah.
my neck hurts. I'm not practicing. Like,
Right. But I think that's the separation of like true professionals versus like trying to be a professional. And just to be honest, hopefully I'm not offending anybody here, but
you can't say a word without offending
and
anybody.
okay.
If you say
But yeah.
the, people will hate it.
I just truly think that's what separates the true professionals from the people that are trying to do it because I know like I can speak for just about everybody that I competed against, practiced against, like they're out there, they're true professionals. They're showing up. Very rarely did I have someone like cancel on me last minute, and if I did, it was very legitimate. And no, it wasn't ideal, but it was legitimate. And then you just figure out a plan B. But I think as long as like in beach volleyball, if you're just like showing that respect for whoever is involved and giving them that heads up, hey, and if it is an emergency and it couldn't be 24, 48 hours, whatever, then that's a side note. But I think as long as you're respecting everybody involved and it's not a repeating offender, then
Right.
it's fine. But I do think there is some value in the mental health piece because I know that's a big thing with um, I can't say I don't know if it's my generation or if it's the next generation, um,
I know. What are we?
but I don't know.
Are we in
But
different ones? I
I
don't.
don't know. Um,
Or somewhere
but
at the
which
end of the alphabet.
yeah, which I think is cool that it's getting more like now, but that's also to not be taken advantage of. So like I said, I think there's a fine line of balancing of balancing that. So hopefully all that made sense. But
Yeah, and I think a pendulum has to swing until I'm a big spectrum guy, and like it, if we make a metaphor of coaching, I'll give two athletes a completely different opposite feedback on the same court, in the same practice, and I'll tell someone specifically like, stop listening. Like I saw you trying to listen to what I'm telling her. Stop listening. That's not for you because I need to bring you back from the end of the spectrum. And I think that sometimes things do need to swing in one way
mm,
until we kind of find that homeostasis, that
totally.
lays somewhere in the middle. So
That's
I don't
life
think
right
it's
there.
bad so long as it's not too long, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that's life right there. If you think about everything happening, I feel like
Yeah, there's a lot of
we got to level out somewhere. So, yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. Speaking of swinging pendulums, you went from Texas to California to Texas. What
Hmm.
what drove you or told you that it was okay or that you needed to go to California to pursue professional beach volleyball? And was that the only thing that was out there for you? Because I think a lot of people get really scared. I did it from New York, but I had no fear. And I think people worry about things. I don't know if it's because I'm the youngest in my family or whatever, but like fear just never plays into any of these decisions. It's, oh,
Hmm.
there's something I want. I'm going to go get it.
Hmm.
So what was it like
Totally.
for you from Texas to, or from, was it from college straight into to California?
No. So, I think I had a little bit of a warm up. So
Mm,
I played professionally overseas first indoor.
okay.
So spent some time in Germany and Puerto Rico. So I already had that
Nice.
like transplant experience, of being very uncomfortable and a little bit of a culture shock. So the thought of going to California wasn't as scary as living in another country. But there was still definitely a lot of unknowns there. I just knew because I started playing here in Texas, and it was more so to stay in shape for my indoor career. And then once I decided, hey, I want to shift away from that, and I really want to
Why
pursue.
why did you stop playing indoor and then start beach? I know my reasons, but I guess everybody's got
Yeah.
different ones. What were your mains? And were you honest
Um,
with yourself at the time with what your main was? Is it different when you look back at it?
that is a great question. I'll tell you I think looking back at it, I'm more honest now than I was at the time. I just knew I had to make a change then. And there's a couple of reasons. One, indoor volleyball overseas is either for you or it's not. And I knew after 2 seasons it was not for me.
Why?
Just I didn't enjoy living in another country on my own. Was the only American on my first team, so I think that was a tough experience for me.
I used to love that.
I see. I'm not like that. I'm just that relational. Like I love to be in relationship with people,
Mm,
and so I thrive if I'm in that setting. And me being on my own in another country, straight out of college, was really difficult for me. Just like mentally and emotionally, I really had a hard time with that. But I got through it, and I look back and I was like, I'm really happy I went through that. So that was one of the reasons. And
I think
then,
that experience made me, especially, it made me stop being a clown. Um, I was like class clown in high school, college. Any opportunity to find a joke when people were talking, like New York, Queens, like I would
hmm
insert, right? And then I learned because I couldn't speak their language to sit at a table and do nothing but listen to people for 2 hours, and it definitely made me less funny. Like I lost my wit over those 2, 3, 4 years, you know. But I was then like now I'm just comfortable sitting at a dinner table and just watching people talk and
mm,
interact. It's a very strange thing that happened.
yeah,
But
yeah.
sorry for interrupting, by the way.
No, you're
And I learned not
good.
to.
No, that was good. But I think that was one of them. And then two, I was just getting a little bit burnt out with the indoor game. And I was going through some like aches and pains with my body on the hard court. So my friends were having me out here in Texas. It was like at Aussie's, and that's where I learned to play beach volleyball. And I was like, man, this is really
Where's
fun.
Aussies?
It's in downtown Austin.
Downtown Austin, and
Hmm.
I've played there a few times. So for
Yes.
those of you guys who are in Austin or visiting Austin, there is tons of beach volleyball in that
Yes.
city. So go ahead and
Yes.
check it out. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're playing at Aussies.
Yeah, that's where I learned to play, and I just quickly fell in love with it, and I was like, "Man, this is really cool." And just getting to know people in the sport, I was given the advice of like, "Hey, like maybe try it out in California." And I quickly realized, "Hey, that's where the best are." And if I want to pursue this at the level that I want to pursue it, I need to go be around the best. Um, so that's what I did. I literally like packed two suitcases, got there, and was like, okay, let's do this.
Was
Um,
your mindset, I need to find the, because I had a friend in who came from gymnastics in Australia. When she got hooked as an adult with beach volleyball, she said, coming from gymnastics, the number one thing you do is find the best coach. I think most American players say find the best city.
mm,
So we travel to that city instead of the best coach. But her thing was like, I need to make enough money to pay the right coach, and she ended up like finishing second in
I know,
Australia,
I know who you're
starting
talking
as an
about.
adult. Yeah,
Christy, right?
Christy Jenkins. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, she's great.
but
Yeah,
like
she's a great athlete.
um, but for me, I was like, no, California, just be in the environment. And I think one of the mistakes of my career and the fastest improvements were when I had coaches every day. USA Elite Development Program,
Mm-hmm.
it was free though, and I had no financial backing, so it's
Yeah.
all like coaching and whatever. Um, but I really wish early on I would have had her mentality of find the best coach, dedicate all your finances to him.
Mm.
So did you have any
Yeah.
mindset of coach, or was it more environment and competition?
I think it was more environment and competition. I had a great coach here, Tim Wolliver.
Oh yeah,
He has Woolies Beach. Shout
he used to
out.
kick my ass. Oh
Yeah.
my god, he was so good.
Yeah, so I was exposed to the game with him first. And really he encouraged me to go out there too. And so I just knew that I wanted to be surrounded. Like I wanted to go drop myself in the middle of where all the best players are and then get my butt kicked a few times and just learn.
Mm,
Um, and for me, that was more exciting, and I wanted that adventure. I wanted to be out in California,
okay.
so that's really what that like drew me there. And I don't regret it one bit. It was definitely hard. There was a lot of humbling moments, but it was the best decision that I made for my career. Because even coming back to Texas, so like I said, at the start of the pandemic, my husband and I decided to come to Texas, and our season got like massively shortened. There was like three COVID tournaments
So
that I played in.
thank God the AVP did those, but
It
so
was like a
weird.
long,
And that whole 3 season period was
yeah,
just strange. Like,
yeah,
are we having a tour? Are we not? And then I think that kind of shut off a lot of my training and stuff and
totally,
motivation for it. But yeah,
totally. But yeah, that and then I tried to make it happen here from Texas, and it was just like there's something about the ease of access to the beach in California, and the like the USA Training Gym is there, like all the like best coaches that I know are there. So there's just so many things that like were much harder for me to find here in Texas. Even like a training team. There are fantastic players out here in Texas, but we're all spread out. And Texas is huge. And so to all meet up and to find those people and to like collaborate on schedules, like what works for everybody, it's just
because there's
different
only four
here.
now. There's not 16 players.
Yes, and for in California, there's a different mentality. Like everyone, at least on the women's side, we knew like from like 8 a.m. to about like 12, 1, everybody's training.
Yep.
Whereas here
Train,
in Texas,
brothers burritos, and
yeah,
then go figure out the rest of your life.
yeah, and in Texas, it's not like that. Everyone has different work schedules, and we live in different parts of the area. So some may need to travel an hour, hour and a half, whatever. So it's just a lot more difficult. So I do feel very confident that for me and my journey that going out to California was the best thing I could do. So, yeah.
Mm. Well, what is I think, and I haven't shared this with anybody, and there's only 4 people here live, so that's fine by me. I've shared it with only like some of the closest people that I have in my volleyball world, but I think I played my last match this
Okay.
summer, and I
Congrats.
before I was doing that, like 2 years before that, I was like, hey, what's life like on the other side? when there's not 4 to 5 hours a day of needing to do this towards like this summer and the year before is like there's no money. I started looking at it as family and money instead of
Mhm.
just be the best volleyball player. Like, what's the best volleyball
Mhm.
player going to do you? For me, being the best volleyball player I could, even if I got to number one in the world, I said that would give me a platform to change the world or to be able to help people in a different way. It was never to be the best player. It
Mm.
was if I can get there, it's a fun way to get a platform that's meaningful to the world. And if
Mhm.
you can be the best player in the world, but you don't change anybody's lives or make them better, aside from motivation or inspiration, I never saw that as something of value.
Mhm.
Um, so I just kept asking people, like, "What's it like on the other side?"
Mhm.
What questions have you asked yourself, or problems did you have with retiring, or was it just, hey, family? I'm so excited about family.
Yeah, that's a great question. First, I want to say congrats on your career.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I know it's a interesting and difficult transition, but it's awesome on the other side. Okay, so I will say for me, it was probably at least a year of me actually like making the firm decision and announcing that I've retired. Um, a few things led to it. It was kind of the perfect storm. So at the end of 2019, we got done playing in Hawaii, and I was so I've had ACL tear throughout my career. I've had two knee surgeries, and it's always like sore, swollen, depending on what I'm doing. But walking off the court after this tournament in Hawaii, it was different. And I was like, okay, this is definitely like a different level than anything before.
Mm.
Um, I'm going to rest it. So I'm going to rest it for a couple months and let's see. So I did. I was doing rehab and it wasn't getting better.
It's funny when like athletes talk about rest. We talk about rest as rehab, not jumping or sprinting,
Yeah.
right? People think that
Rehab.
rest actually means like rest. It's like, no, that actually won't
Oh,
repair anything.
yes.
You have to actually rehab it, not rest
Yes.
it.
Not just do nothing. Yeah. And to make a long story short, that's what started my thinking of retirement. Because after seeing two different doctors to get different opinions, it was basically like, hey, if you continue doing what you're doing, you're on the route to at least a partial knee replacement. So that's what triggered the thought of like, okay, hold on, I got to think about the rest of my life. Like, I want to be like running around with my kids. I don't want to be having a knee replacement in my 30s or 40s. So that's what triggered the thought. And then shortly after, well, then I had just gotten married. That happened. And then we went on our honeymoon. And then after that, COVID hit. And so I could just feel something in my soul, like kind of in this season of like, we got married, all this. It was one of my best seasons. I loved 2019 so much. But I was still having like stirring in my soul of like, hey, I think I might be called to a different chapter of my life, but I wasn't ready to admit it. And because you talk to any athlete, it's really hard to let go. And it's kind of an ego thing, but it's hard to let go. And so after the whole knee thing, COVID hit, and I got to experience life outside of volleyball for the first time, and nobody was playing volleyball. So it was a really weird season that everyone's locked down, so you have no FOMO of anything going on, and you're just experiencing life. I was experiencing life as a newlywed. I was back in Texas near my family, and I was like, "Oh, like this is kind of nice." I'm digging it, and then I'm stubborn, so I made the decision. I was like, "I'm gonna go play these three tournaments in 2020. I'm not ready to hang it up." I went and played, and it was mentally, emotionally, physically very hard on me, very hard on my knee. I being away from home, away from my husband, I was like, what am I doing? Like I'm out in California. I have to be out here because traveling back and forth, I'm increasing my risk of
Mm.
COVID. We get tested before every tournament. And it just like was slowly like settling for me of like, okay, I think I'm ready.
Yeah.
So then after those three tournaments, I had some time off and discussions with Brad. And I was like, you know what? And actually, this is pretty significant for me as a woman is my dad during that time, I moved back here And we were out at dinner with him, and I was telling him that I'm starting to think about retirement and everything. He was like, yeah, Amanda, I think a good question to ask is in, 5, 10 years, do you want to be hugging a medal or wearing a medal, or do you want to be hugging a baby? And for me personally, that like hit home of like, you're right. Like I
Mm,
think I'm ready to start my family. And so yeah, I once I made that decision and actually announced it, I felt like a weight lifted and kind of the sense of freedom. And still it was hard. I've been kind of wrestling with my identity ever since because my identity's been an athlete my whole life.
right.
And yeah, so that's been a weird thing for me. And now I'm in a whole nother like identity of like being a mom. Because when you're pursuing your passion for so long and living out your dream, it's like, okay, well, what is next? So I'm still kind of discovering of like, what is next? What is that next passion going to be? And right now it's being a mom.
Mm,
But I will say, like, I look back on my career and I'm so grateful I did it. I loved every second of it. And then now I see my life and I'm like, man, I don't miss it. Like there's parts of it that I'm like, I miss competing because
mm.
that's like in me. It's ingrained in me. But I wouldn't give up what I have today to go back. So I knew it was the right decision.
Nice. I've gotten that's it. That's a good recounting because I've gotten
Hmm.
a few different ones. It's interesting that you talked quickly about competing on the volleyball court. I'm not actually interested in competing anymore. Like the last 2.5, almost 3 years, it's been
Mm.
if there's not an audience around, that we can entertain, like this is dumb. We're just like knocking a ball back and forth. And I hate being like the better at beach guy and like saying that, but it's you know I need to have that enjoyment, the stimulus, that like
Hmm.
sting and the tingle from passing a ball and the interest in like getting to like, yeah, I know how to do it. I know what went wrong. And
Hmm.
I know what went right, and now it's just kind of a battle of attrition sometimes. And then yes, you can dig, but for me, how many more hours and months of digging does it take to get those extra 1 or 2 points, that you need to go
Hmm.
from ninth to seventh, seventh to fifth, third, fifth, and then oh, and then in terms of hours, when you calculate that, because I've been just studying business nonstop,
Hmm.
uh, in terms of hours dedicated, what does that really get you? Does it get you to the grand, better platform that
Yeah.
I want to be able to like change the world, or would those hours be dedicated better to like actually making enough money to just have a louder voice or to be able to
Yeah.
talk to people like you on this podcast, you know, um, and then share some ideas. So
Hmm.
two of the guys that I really respected playing against and was one of the guys I was intimidated by, one of the guys I admired, but one of them was Matt Prosser, who's now doing a bunch of announcing.
Yeah.
All those
Yes.
guys, he's an intimidating figure, and he can smile, he can joke, but when he's on the other side, you feel like he wants to kill you. And I talked to him because he went into, I
He's
think he went
broadcast.
into like sales, maybe medical device or pharmaceutical
Okay.
sales,
He's
something
been
like
doing
that.
some broadcasting too.
Oh,
I
and
saw.
crushing it and loving it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, and he's way nicer when you're not facing him on the court. But he was like, I just miss competing. Like
Mm,
he got like a dark voice, and he was just like, I just miss competing,
totally.
in a real way. And then Ty Trambly, who he was
Yes, I know
just a
Ty.
few years above me. He's somebody who had fun, who lit up the crowd, who was full
Yes.
of energy. And his reason, he can still play.
Hmm.
Legit, he can still play. He's like, I hate competing. His thing is that he's like, it creates a ton of negative feelings, negative
Hmm.
emotion. If you don't succeed, then it just kicks your ego and your mind and your soul into the gutter, until
Such a
you
roller
come back.
coaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting to see two guys who I respected and admired, and have totally different feelings on
Hmm.
competition. And
Yeah.
I don't really know where I stand because I like playing, competing, but I was never the one who well, I was for a while, but recently it's never been like the like, yeah, I just want to compete and like take their head
Yeah.
off. It's like, yeah, all right, it's past that spike, you
Yeah.
know.
Totally. Totally. And I think just to speak to what you're saying, I think you'll find on the other side
Mm,
of life, um, I think you won't place as much importance on the sport. That's what happened to me. Is like the sport was everything, and then I had life happen. Of I got married, and so things were quickly replacing the importance of that sport. And I don't know. I just knew like, and I think you're having that realization as well of like, what do I want in life? And where can this take me if I continue to pursue it
right.
versus, hey, if my heart and my head is ready to step out, what's next for me? And I think to each their own, but I definitely I see that in you because
Mhm.
that's exactly what I was going through. Um, it's uncomfortable, but it's exciting. So just lead into it.
It's still fun as hell to coach and see
Yeah.
other people like hitting new levels, and then you see. For me, one of the things that I love about coaching, what we do with like our online members, our clinics, our camps, is when you see somebody improve literally at anything. Like, all right, Texas girl, maybe at some point you've played beer pong. Yeah. But like I always like create this metaphor in my head where it's like somebody shoots and they miss, and then you give them one piece of feedback, and they hit it and they're like, it worked, and it's a high five and they're smiling for the next like 3 minutes. Like something so simple and stupid, but they
Yeah.
did something, they improved, and their confidence just shoots up, and that makes them a better human for a while.
Mhm.
Right? You like ride that roller coaster. And that's what I
See.
love about coaching and leading and helping people with their businesses and helping people with volleyball, because it's
Mhm.
not just like, yes, I made you a better volleyball player. But you're now going to carry this confidence and joy to the very next stop in your life, and you're going to walk a
Mhm.
little bit taller. You're going to take a shot that you might not have, because you know that as a human you're capable of learning something and then applying it and improving. That's just to me, that's what gets me really fired up nowadays.
Yeah. That's so rad, and that's what's so great about sport in general.
Mm,
And I'm sure you're feeling this too. I hear you whenever you talk about it. Is it's so much more rewarding to be giving that or providing that for other people and to be helping them along their journey. And you're finding it's more rewarding in this season of your life. But man, that's sport. And this sport in particular is such a roller coaster. And I think that's why it's so addicting. Because you're like, man, if I just keep going, I get better. And that's why people play for so long because you really do get better. And you just
mm,
like hang your hat on these little improvements. You're like, wait a second. I just got second. What if next weekend I can get first? Like, so it's like kind of an addiction. And as an athlete, you just feed off of that. So that was hard to break from. But
uh,
I think that's why some athletes are like, I just want to compete because they miss that like high of like, okay, but
right. I think what I love most is learning. I think that's what
mm-hmm.
I get hooked on, like that little improvement as a person,
Yeah.
not necessarily competition, but learning and then applying what you learned. And so like right now, I'm constantly learning with business classes, website, podcasts. Like I absorb a lot through podcasts, and when I realized
Yeah.
how much that I learn only through podcasts, I was like, wait a second, why doesn't Better at Beach have a podcast? And then I just started setting it out, and I was just like,
Yeah.
the only way that I learn anything, we're not producing here, so why not do it?
That's
But
awesome.
uh, to be able to learn is a big thing. So now I've started doing jujitsu, and it's awesome. Like I
Yeah.
listen to a lot of Joe Rogan, but to
He's
hear them
awesome.
talk about it, oh, he's great. He's great. He's an Austin guy now.
Yeah.
You know, and but you're learning something new, and then like to see how fast you can apply it, how fast you can
Mm-hmm.
problem solve, and say this is something I haven't done, and now I've gotten to this level, and look, I improved in an hour
Mm-hmm.
and a half. I improved. That's a good feeling for me now
Yeah.
in volleyball playing. It's like it takes about 2 weeks to feel improvement if you work on one thing for that
Mm-hmm.
long, because of how long we've been playing, and the level we're playing
Mm-hmm.
at. So it's just like uh, you get a little more niblets of joy a little bit faster.
Yeah. For sure.
So,
For sure. That's awesome.
yeah. So, well, what's next for you then? What's you're momming, you're figuring that out.
Momming. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Brad's making
my
music.
yeah. Hopefully soon. I want him to actually record some songs for her. So I think that's going to be a little side project he's going to do for me.
Awesome.
But yeah, being a mom is my focus right now. Both Brad and I joined my family's business. He got into marketing,
Mm.
and I got into more of an HR role, kind of just like culture, both internally and externally for our company.
Oh my God, you
And
must be
that's
so good
been,
at that.
thank you, but that's been awesome because I knew leaving volleyball, I wanted to learn business. I wanted to put myself in an environment that I knew very little and learn. And so that's what I've been doing since I retired, and I love it. So I am doing that part time right now. But being a mom is my 100%. That's my number one. And it's honestly like that's been a dream of mine forever is being a mom.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna live in that right now, and just enjoy it because, like I said, she changes so much every day, and I don't want to miss a moment.
Yeah,
So that's what's going on with me right now. We'll see where life takes me in the next chapter. Um, but yeah,
that's great.
so
I think we got kind of the same heart. Like, I've always wanted to be a dad for sure.
mm-hmm,
And then like coaching, and then like I'm preparing coaching so that I can be a better dad and learning like
yeah,
seeing how people screw up and how people get better. But I'm like hustling my ass off right now so that I can just create like all online businesses so that I can just
yes,
sit here with my kid all
yes,
day long. Like that is number one goal. There's this one book. It's a little weird, but there's this guy's father in the book. He literally lives with him day in, day out, like walks with him through the woods, walks with him through the world, trades with him, and there's no like typical school or anything.
mm-hmm,
And I'm like, oh, how awesome would that be to
dude.
just every day in and day out with your kid? Some people don't like that idea, or they
I love that
want a more
idea.
typical life. For me, I'm just it's everything that I want. And
Oh
I
man,
promised Janelle in her vows, I said I'll be the best dad this world has ever seen. Like that
yes.
was a quote from my vows.
I love it. It's the best job you'll ever have. And I want to like throw this one at you because you might be really interested. There's a platform called 1,000 Hours Outside, and it's all about spending 1,000 hours outside with your child throughout the course of a year.
Oh,
And so they'll
great.
give you different ideas depending on like where you live and all that kind of stuff. But it's like I watched one of my college teammates do that with her daughter, and that's where I got the idea. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait till Ella gets a little bit bigger. We're gonna do it. So that just reminded me of you saying that, because children all about getting them away from screens and getting them outside and experiencing the world. So I'm all about that, and I can't wait for that.
Love that. Yeah, they got a free ebook the same way we do our website. This is
Mhm.
videos on it. That
Mhm.
is
Yeah,
such
it's
a
cool.
great idea. And it's nice to have ideas and just like a plan. I think that's
Yeah.
why even like our online courses and programs, they're successful because, hey, follow a plan. Follow a
Mhm.
plan and we'll be there to back you up and help you out. And it's yes, everybody knows, okay, go outside with your kids, right? Like,
Mhm.
yes. But to have something that you can follow, look at every day and say, this is what we do today. Great.
Yeah. Takes
So
the thinking out of it.
yeah,
So,
makes it a little bit easier.
yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Amanda, this is man, we should have been way closer friends when we were on tour. Shoot.
I know. I'm
We
glad we
missed
finally
out.
connected. I know.
Yeah.
Oh man. But I'm really excited for you. I appreciate you having me on. This is
Mhm.
a treat. And I love hearing about everything you're doing. This is so rad. And congrats on soon to be fatherhood. I'm
Thank
excited
you.
for you and Janelle. It's the
Thank you.
best thing you'll ever do. And yeah, I can't wait for that for you guys.
Same to you. Same to you. Does
Thank you.
are there any projects or anything that you're working on that you'd like to share or anybody to follow you? If not, no big
Oh man.
deal.
You know
Um,
what? You know what? If you want to come see my beautiful baby, you can follow me on Instagram at adowdy11, or just other moms out there. I'm working on just my postpartum health and just coming back to my own. So yeah, it's a whole new journey for me. So that's what I got going on right now. I share a little bit of just the athlete side of it too.
mm,
Um, but yeah, you can check me out there if you want to. I'd love to have you follow and to connect with you there.
awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. This was great. There's no wrap up necessary for this episode, so just appreciate your
Awesome.
time and talking to you, and
Yeah.
enjoy your new baby girl, and hang out with Brad. And this is a
Thank
great
you.
talk. Really appreciate the time.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Great seeing you.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.